sorry. Yeah, so those are the key questions around which we have wanted to have the discussion. In fact, the whole value chain, starting with the research, how to make it industry focused, because that we have heard that sometimes research in its own place, industry goes at its own pace. And Mr. Mariwala mentioned this earlier in the day, that most of the research and innovation is happening at a certain pace and the industry is sometimes struggling. But industry has the other side of the problem. How does research become more focused around the industry agenda? Second thing is that innovation is happening in pockets. So are we seeing the full value chain of innovation coming through? I think that's a key question which is there. Manufacturing, how to integrate the whole innovation ecosystem and scale up into giving more manufacturing. Maybe because as we go forward, you want to add more color. Finance, the need of finance is going to be huge. Just as a data point, the energy transition is going to require about $4.5 trillion a year going forward, because this is the largest capital reallocation exercise which we are seeing. And more than 10% or around 10% is going to be in India. That's a very large amount. But the bigger problem is that some of these are going to be in areas where failure will naturally be high, or some of those technologies will be superseded by other technologies. Finance, unfortunately, finds it very difficult to adjust to those trends and shifts. So how can we make it financeable, especially the breakthrough technologies? But coming towards the last two things which are right in the remit of Honorable Minister over here, and a lot of people who are here from the education sector and the skills sector, how do we get the skill system and the education system aligned to these needs? How do we change the curriculums over a period of time? And sometimes very quickly, you know, some of our textbooks have been there for about 50 years now. But now even 5 years looks like a luxury in the sense that how do we get that? And that's not been the system we have been used to. And finally, how does the ecosystem bring all of that together and in the context role of policy? I think that's the broad agenda. Vikas, you want to add color?
Yeah, I think just to deep dive into the problem, I think there is massive concentration of clean energy manufacturing towards China. If we see just solar, which is a mature industry, 79% of manufacturing happens in China for the world. The same percentage for wind is 64, for battery storage is 74, and electrolyzers, which are catching up now, is 41%. So this exposes the world to huge risks, price fluctuations, supply chain risks, and so on. Now, as a growing economy, India needs resources, manufactured products, skills, and that entire ecosystem needs to work. We have done very well on deployment, which we've heard, and there are sessions tomorrow as well. But can we claim that on the upstream side of things when it comes to resources and manufacturing? So that is where we want to bring all these dimensions together. So if India has to play that game, it has to be full game, where all of these ecosystems work together. And as Honorable Minister said, can energy be the fulcrum? So that is what we are headed out to debate here. In terms of format, it's an open format. We do have some discussants and specific questions for some of the discussants which we'll come on to. But we will not intend to summarize today. We will come back to each of you and summarize the findings today. So maybe
let's get started on the first thing and the subtext of that question, how to make it focused on industry challenges. So let me start with you, Rajiv. We would have had you tomorrow also had you not been flying off to China? No, Hong Kong. Okay, so Rajiv, you know, are you getting research around your problem statements? Yeah, the mic, please, here.
Yeah. I thought I was lucky enough it won't work. This is not the question I was expecting to see. But I think if we take a step back, you know, I wouldn't know about China, but certainly compared to the West, America, we find a lot less connect between industry and academia. Even if you take non-scientific matters, in my own company and group, in the companies I have worked for, more Harvard Business case studies have been written than IIM Ahmedabad or any other IIM ones. We just do not have a system where we seem to have the same amount of interaction. So I think the challenge is really how do we, and by the way, if you look at the other end, the role of policy, I think between industry and the policymakers, government, now there is a very well-developed, reasonably well-developed system of constant interactions, every policy being opened up for feedback. I don't think the government puts any new policy in place without asking for our feedback. I'm not sure if on the other end, the government and academia have, but I have to tell you, as from speaking from private industry, we have virtually nothing, unless and until you specifically go and target one. So that is one missing link, and particularly if you look at, and I do not know whether the minister had, I'm sure he has had discussions above on various battery technologies, but we all know lithium ion, there's just not enough lithium in the world to support energy transition. But if you ask me, as someone who is in the renewable industry, do I know of any research in India on sodium ion or others? I'm sure there are. I live opposite IIT Bombay. There must be some people, but there is no institutional mechanism for us to either know that or benefit from that, both ways. So that, I suppose, structurally is something we lack, and I don't think that's only in my company.
So you're saying that the policy and the industry connect is now well established, but the industry and the research community connect is not. Absolutely. Is missing.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Dr. Ramkumar, let me come to you. The mic over here, please. I'll just hand it over. The public sector plays a very interesting role because somewhere it sits in between, the whole industry, which sometimes the private sector doesn't have access to the research or the education system. But the public sector is slightly different, right? Because it is closer to the government. Is that the same problem for the public sector as well?
Thank you, Anish. I just debuted the office as Director R&D, Indian Oil. My experience is slightly different than what you quoted. I think when Honorable Minister was holding a petroleum charge, he was the person who guided and took the initiative of all the oil sector companies, both downstream, midstream, and upstream, to come together, identify some projects of national importance, because each oil company is a competing oil company in the market. But when it comes to some of the new areas, sunrise areas, all of us are on the learning curve. So he said that you shed the competition there and you identify the pain points, and he brought one of the top-notch government institution, IIT Mumbai, and he made us to constitute as an industry a center of excellence on oil, gas, and energy at IIT Mumbai. Under your leadership, this was constituted, and this is now into its third year of existence, and we are pursuing today more than 12 projects, which are common to all the Indian oil and gas sector. So I think in public sector undertaking, the interaction with the government and the industry is a little more frequent, little more organized. I must say, I think this is going okay. Very well.
Okay, fair. So I think there is a little bit of a split situation there, because you want to do a mood check.
So I think let's do a quick mood check and move to Menti. Which of these 6 issues, 7 issues that you saw, you believe is more important? And can we have the Menti, please?
Yeah, so we'll do a mood check, and you have to hit your phones. Just like everything digital, like payments, which we do on the phones, you also have to hit your phones. Go to www.menti.com, or you can scan this QR code if you wish. And the access code in that is 55625968.
And you can select up to top 3 options.
Which is the most critical gap, is it? on the research, innovation, manufacturing, finance,
So
education and
finance,
skilling, ecosystem creation, and
we have the
policy.
results also coming up.
Okay, let's see the font is difficult to read, but we can read the question number. Finance seem to be winning.
I think finance rules the chart. So I think on finance, while this is coming up, there are two different dimensions of finance. One is the general accessibility of finance, but when we are looking at the startups, the innovation ecosystem, it's also availability of risk capital. Because initially the project may not be bankable, the technology may not be proven, use cases might be missing and so on. So any views on that, on the financing part, how can we improve? Maybe we can have a show of hands.
Let's open up the floor, actually. Anybody who wants to respond on the point of finance. Is this a challenge that we can overcome? Bharat, you as an analyst, you have a good view of things. Maybe just a quick introduction and then.
Sure. Hi, my name is Bharat Parekh. I head the equity research on the power infrastructure and the new energy, including ESG at CLSA, which is a Hong Kong headquartered investment bank. So just to give you an opposite view on finance, frankly speaking, this finance for renewables, in my view, is quite misunderstood. There is not a single well-structured green project which is not getting finance. If you don't structure, even best of the projects will fail. But otherwise, technologies are established, cost structures are unbeatable by any source of fossil, including captive coal I'm talking about. So if we get our processes right, finance is waiting to happen. We are not structuring it well, that's about it. But we need to split the finance. Startup ecosystem is a venture capital game. Do not confuse it with the public or private market. That's a venture capital. So as long as we split the finance and allocate the risk properly, there is enough and more funding waiting to come into India from global people. Actually, me kind of represent more global investors. There is enough of finance available, frankly speaking. We need to get our structures right.
But just extending that point, and we'll hear other views as well on this, but going into the from research and innovation stage into the manufacturing and scaling, is there a finance issue there, or is there enough money for manufacturing also? The reason is that the technologies in manufacturing change so quickly. China turns over the lines in over months, not just even years, right? So,
very good question. And if I could just throw and turn this thing around, in the worst of the efficiencies of technologies, if you can beat fossils, you can imagine the upside you will have. And even at these efficiencies, I think finance is available. It's just for us to grab, do the core research and do not follow China, what China did. We need to leapfrog that. As long as we have an innovative model, manufacturing excellence anyways there in India. India actually beats everybody as far as the precision engineering and stuff like that is concerned. And finance will follow a good idea. Nobody wants to leave like double-digit equity IRRs on the table, right? Okay. That's the way I would summarize it.
Any other views around there? Please come in. And again.
Hi, I'm Subramaniam. I take care of business development for a renewable solutions company. Radiance Renewables is the name. We build solar power plants, more than close to 1 gigawatt under construction. So I, on the contrary to what Bharat expressed, and I did speak about it at a CII event earlier this month as well, that the risk appetite and the capital that is available for taking up innovation to the next level. And you just did mention, Anish, that China revamps module lines. I mean, we saw maybe about 3 years before a 330 watt peak module being something that is path breaking. Today, you talk about 720 watt peak also, it's nothing. And then every 3 to 6 months, there is a new version coming out of it. And we are still maybe 2-3 versions behind in India when it comes to our own manufacturing. And coming to that level of actually thinking about whether we can actually do a heterojunction or whether we can do a perovskite or whether we can do something that is the next level of innovation in manufacturing. And I believe there are only very, very few select firms in India which are actually putting in that risk capital into manufacturing that is path breaking and truly innovative in its nature. We tend to believe that let somebody else try and then we become the next, adopter. I mean, while the early adopter psychology is improving, but I think the innovator psychology is still not crept into the industry as much as it should. And that's perhaps where a lot more money needs to get in and a lot more, I think, appetite to, for failure needs to be developed because be it, wind, be it solar, be it battery technology, I think we are sufficiently behind what perhaps, the rest of the world is doing despite having a lot of innovation happening at a startup level, scaling them up to manufacturing and then bringing them to a level where they become bankable projects is still many people are looking outside for capital rather than getting it done in India and then bringing them to really, world-class, ventures.
Dr. Vaishnav, your soda bottle point is kind of confirmed there or reiterated there, that these are two different ecosystems. The mature players don't look at fast turnaround. The younger players don't get access to them. That is there. You want to make a comment on there?
So what I find with mature players across various industries is that every time I ask a question, when do you interact with a startup? They typically cite two situations under which they will interact with a startup. One, where their top line improves. So where they can go to a client and say, look, by linking up with this startup, I can offer you more. Or their bottom line improves, which is that they have some essential function that they must perform which this startup reduces the cost of, right? Now, and it's their money. I mean, who am I to say they shouldn't do that? But what I find is both of these arguments assume that the total pie is constant and I want a larger fraction of the pie. But in many cases, the pie is disappearing. That's where the startups come because they are taking the risk, right? So I think.
I think so. You're reiterating the point. I think I'll allude to what Mr. Mariwala mentioned earlier. Harsh Mariwala, the chairman of Micro Industries, he mentioned that industry must find a way to take its guard off because otherwise we build our defensive mechanisms around what we have, and when a disruption comes, we just put the guards up. We must find some part of us as a mature system, and I think that applies too for consultants like KPMG. We must find some part of us which takes the guards off and lets the thing enter into a limited space if required initially. But I think, Bharat, maybe you have a different view, but I think this question is still very, very open. We'll move on from there to the next set of questions, Vikas.
I think we had some
We
raise
had
of
a
hands there.
point
as well.
there,
Yes.
Ranajit.
Yeah, hi Anish, this is Ranajit, currently with HDFC Bank as an advisor. I would like to highlight one dichotomy that emerged is that project finance is not the same finance that you have highlighted. So I think some people are confused about project finance. I think wind and solar innovations have happened largely in the US, I guess, and Europe. Wind in Europe, large-scale wind projects and solar projects in US. The efficiencies have dramatically improved, but they have all happened through balance sheet funded research. They have not been, and when they have been upscaled, there have been incremental efficiencies that have then further translated into project finance. So this kind of financing in India for innovation has to happen through balance sheets. There are no lenders standing there or venture capital. I was part of a committee that the Ministry of Petroleum set up for funding of discovered small field projects, and we haven't after a lot of effort, got any success. So forget, I mean, that is a quite certain economic proposition, provided everything falls into place. The risk appetite for project financing doesn't exist where there are uncertainties for banks, because we are funding at the end of the day for the benefit of deposit holders. Unfortunately, India, the venture capital network does not, for all practical purposes, exist like it exists in the US. If you see the shale gas innovation in the US, how it has happened, after 20 years of innovation through funding through venture capital route. That is something perhaps we should encourage in a much, much bigger way. I think the government is doing it. That's where the solution lies to the finance you have highlighted here.
Okay, so I think that's a very, very valid point. The scale of finance available, because the scale of innovation is very different. And the scale of finance, if it's not available at the same level, then suddenly we are going to see lots of great ideas, great solutions, which are entirely possible, but falling off because there is not enough access to finance. I think that's a very, very important thing, and maybe something for the government also to consider, that is there an alternate way of getting large-scale funding available? Because these are all viable ideas. Of course, there'll be risk, but this is not an area for project finance. It's either you have large balance sheets and, as we said, open the guard a little bit and let them in, or there are much more scaled up funds which can do that kind of thing. Because it's not classic private equity play also, because some of these may not work in classic private equity play. Private equity will go to IEX and IGX, right, Rajesh? So, which they're quite mature models.
I think we have excellent participation from the academic sphere as well. So let's go back to the skills question. And maybe Dr. Kalsi, Dr. Sitaraman, Dr. Leena, any views on, we saw
that was the second question. After we look at finance, the second question is availability of skills at that scale, because we can have innovators, but we have the skills, and especially in terms of statistics, we are looking at up to 9 million jobs additional per year coming if we get the story right. But then that story has to be of one of extremely high skills. Maybe Dr. Kalsi and Dr. Sir, maybe you first, sir. Just the mic, please, yeah.
See, we are working with AICT and KPMG, and we had identified all the verticals, end-to-end verticals in all the energy sectors, especially the green sectors. We looked at the total requirement of the manpower, which is going to come in next 20 years. And based on that, we have identified the job roles. And for those job roles, where do we want to add the skilling capacity, whether at the AICT level or NCVT level or at ITI level. So wherever we need to add that, we are working on that. So you're absolutely right that without good hands, then nothing is going to work. So ultimately, we'll have to add these people. Also, there's a large-scale reskilling involved, because number of people will now go to the green energy sectors who are working in the other sectors. So that reskilling would be required. Similarly, with innovation and with new energy technologies coming in, we need upskilling, very frequent upskilling. It's not only the...
I think another mic, please, over here, because I think this has gone off.
Yes.
Okay, it's working.
It's not only the fresh skilling, but it is also reskilling and upskilling, which needs to be taken into account. So we are working on that.
Okay. Dr. Sitaram?
So to take the scaling part, we have 5,600 MBA and PG diploma colleges in the country, 3,500 plus engineering colleges, another 3,500 diploma colleges. So we are thinking, as part of this green energy skill capacity building framework, we have also worked with KPMG as well as Kalsi ji. We have actually submitted that report to Honorable Minister now. That report basically highlights, what are the steps, future steps we're going to take. whether to train in all the levels what Kalsiji talked about, technical, supervisory, engineering and management level. So we have started identifying the pool of experts and also the curriculum for the updated curriculum for the industry needs, both at the diploma level, UG, PG level. We have already started the work. So model curriculum we are planning to develop. So we are making team of experts to develop this both with the industry as well as academicians. We are initially thought of creating a minor course in introduction in the energy and green engineering, and also full-fledged UG level course in energy engineering and renewable energy and smart energy engineering. Actually, in this, at IIT Guwahati as a director, we have already created a new school of energy science and engineering and a UG program very recently, about a year back. IIT Mumbai already has it, IIT Delhi also has it, but we started as a new. So another thing we are thinking of, mandatory course on energy management and also the literacy course for all our MBA and PG diploma courses. So that, they will be at least updated what are the requirements and how to align ourselves to the rapid innovation sector as well as the scaling of this training part. So coming to the innovation, AICT is already thinking to organize hackathons in energy sector. Maybe we request all the industry people to join hands with us. It's okay, we are already discussing with several of the industry people. And AICT is also, we will go to the Honorable Minister for creating a AICT venture fund. He has already advised us, we are talking to several of the experts. So we have made one meeting has already happened. So we are going to create a AICT venture fund for startups at these colleges. All these colleges where some innovative ideas, we can take it, support them to the different levels. So these are some of the steps we have taken. And another important step we are going to take is develop some courses on Swayam portal. So those who do not know about Swayam portal, we have close to about 9,800 courses, full courses on Swayam, on all disciplines starting from social science to engineering technology. Majority of them on engineering technology. Today, students can register for these courses online. IIT Madras actually evaluates and give them a credit. And this credit is transferable already. And we have already said, both AICT and UGC, 40% of the regular courses can be directly taken through these Swayam courses. So this is all I would like to share.
I think great measure. So I'm sure that there's a huge amount of progress which is happening. But let me come back to Rajiv's question and his thing about whether there's enough engagement between the industry and especially the private sector, because in India, private sector is becoming larger and larger, and the whole education and skills apparatus. Now, Mr. Murthy, your thoughts on that, whether that engagement is right? Is that there? Is it improving? If you had to rate it on a scale of 10, where do we stand and where do we intend to go? So the mic here, please. Mr. Murthy was here, right? Sanjay Murthy? No? No, I'm sorry, I mistook you. Mr. Tiwari is here? Yes. No, Atul Tiwari, the skills secretary. Okay, but you can answer always. Sure.
Yeah, thank you. By mistake, thank you very much. I am A.K. Tiwari. I am member Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. And yes, I have rated policy. So I would like to share my views on the policy, which has got the poor mark. Because as a regulator, I find that policy plays important role. And as a regulator, we found that for the oil and gas sector, particularly for natural gas, where we have done so much for award of areas in the country, we find that the policy needs change, as well as it has to be comfortable policy and percolated to the down below at every state, at every place. Now, for particularly talking about this skill development as well as innovation, startup and all, our policy has to be consistent and it has also to be in everywhere, research, innovation, manufacturing, finance, education, everywhere it has to be there. It has not to be separate. So these changes are required at the government level, at the policy maker, and it has to be consistently reviewed and comfortable policy. I mean to say that a comfortable policy is very important. So
Right.
that
Thank
was
you.
my view.
Bharat, we'll come to you, but let me, since I have named Mr. Tiwari, let me go to Ved Tiwari. Yes. On that question which I had.
About the policy question.
About whether the engagement between the industry and the whole system, education and skills ecosystem is going there, right? And maybe just a quick introduction for the group.
So I am Vedmani Tiwari from National Skill Development Corporation. So as you mentioned that the sector, Power to X, is transforming the energy sector not only on the generation side, but generation, transmission, and utilization. And that requires a very short cycle of product project conception to a commercialization. If you see, the government of India under our Honorable Prime Minister in 2014 created a Ministry of Skill. And there the short-term skilling and long-term skilling were brought together. And recently, 2 years back, our Honorable Minister took over as education and skills both. So if you see the research to this education skill continuum, this is being addressed very well in last 2 years. Dr. Kalsi is here and under the direction of Honorable Minister, they have come up, three regulators of this country has come up with a powerful national credit framework. We were all talking about everything responds to incentives. And the national credit framework provides such a beautiful incentive system that you can earn your credits from education skill at workplace. So I think this kind of convergence of industry, educational institutions and skills ecosystem and the individual at the core of it, that you can continue your lifelong learning. This is the risk capital of your time that you put into it. And your career, you can build your career on this. I think India is, education and skill in India is at a very interesting phase. And thanks to the regulators and our Honorable Minister, educational institutions and skill ecosystem is working very closely. Today, for any undergrad, you need only 60% from your credits from your major. 40% you can earn from skill. And that's where the industry has to come forward and work with educational institutions. So I think the National Curriculum Framework and National Credit Framework address that ecosystem creation for education and skill.
But let's score it. If you were to look at on a scale of 10, okay, maybe we are much better than where we were a few years ago. But where are we now?
I think,
especially the engagement with the industry, the inputs from the industry into your process and content requirements.
So I think one more thing which I missed to mention that the skill ministry also have sector skill councils. These are, and recently you were there when three CEOs of sector skill council, and later on we involved logistics sector skill council also, because there is a transportation logistic issue involved in the gas handling, etc. The 4 sector skill councils are working together today, and they bring the perspective to this. So even this approach, that sector skill councils, 3 or 4 sector skill councils come together and formulate a policy to address this is a very positive development. My request would be that industry here has to, probably we need to do more awareness about this credit framework, national credit framework and national, and this whole concept. I today see there are educational institutions are showing a lot of interest in skills. And the industries also wants to work very closely with education. So I have seen a dramatic change in the last 2 years, and I'm very excited about the...
I do have a follow-on on this. I think when we look at the jobs market as a whole, one is India jobs for India. Second is India is also essentially a workforce provider to the world. So India jobs for the world. And then the global captives that are coming in India, large captives who are setting up shop in India. the jobs in India. So have we segmented? I think one integration with the industry is one point. This needs to transcend across countries also with others. So any thoughts on that?
So in this context, if you see the recent G20 deliberations, there were two working groups. One was on the education and another was on the employment side. In the employment working group and education working group, there was a lot of, the Honorable Minister himself was guiding us to work on the future of work. So the future of work deliberations were actually cutting across both education and employment. And there was a lot of work, discussions happened on the skill taxonomy front. And I recently had a meeting with the ILO. They are very excited with this G20 document which has come forward, that if we build a skill taxonomy, and that becomes the building block, as we said, the National Credit Framework and Curriculum Framework for India, the skill taxonomy and G20 adoption of a skill taxonomy will be a game changer, because then you have first time you will have a framework where skills become transferable, not only horizontally within a sector, you also have a global transferability of skills.
So great, I think that's great progress. Leena, you want to comment on that? But I must comment that there is great progress, but I must also comment that, at least coming from the people who are closer to the industry, I don't see the communication yet having fallen into the level. Maybe you want to make a comment on that, or related? Just introduce yourself and.
Yeah, hi. I'm Nitin Bhatnagar. I'm the director for Halide Chemicals. I'm probably the only small company out here. We are a small-scale industry manufacturing eco-friendly green cleaning chemicals. And my point on research and innovation from academia to industry, coming from the perspective of a small industry, is that there is definitely a lot of work happening at the IIT levels. But then not every innovator in India has access to IITs. So if you are looking to create innovation and research across the country, there has to be some system, some solution to creating at least few of the top colleges or institutions in every city, every tier 2 and tier 3 at least cities, and say one particular college qualifies as a center of excellence. And maybe it can become a hub and spoke model with the IITs, link one institute to a research and innovation point, give them some extra credits on the NAC rating if they have some published research happening from there, something which goes into the industry from there, give them more points, let the India Today ratings, etc., rate them higher. So if something like that can happen, the innovation can come from smaller cities as well across the country.
So I think some of that links to the, sir, please, links to the ecosystem creation point which you're saying.
Yeah, I'm Anil Sahasrabudhe, formerly chairman of AICT, now National Educational Technology Forum. Well, as far as education and skilling is concerned, our curricula many times are outdated, number one, so that has to be regularly revised. Secondly, education also should contain skilling. Otherwise, you will have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but not the practical knowledge. Thirdly, we are talking about connection with the industry. I think internship becomes very, very important and significant thing. And unless all the students who are in the college or university education go to an industry, spend about 6 months of time, they will never become, industry ready on one side, and be not innovative as well. And therefore, whether it is design thinking course in the school level onwards, or what I call to become an entrepreneur, we have a lot of ideas. And these ideas will remain at TRL 1, 2, 3 level, and then they drop out. We have value of death in startups, so there is a death in the TRL level 3 or 4. And unless our industries pick them up, you talked about opening up the boundaries. I'm taking at least open a window, and that window of opportunity will convert these TRL 3, 4 to 7, 8, and then create startups, and then comes the finance. And one of the finances which is very important is to proof of concept stage, we don't have any funding. Once you become little successful, then there are some angel investors or others coming in. So I think there is a fund required at that stage at the college and university where we have cells which are existing, that you provide some minor fund for proof of concept, and then they will take off.
I must tell a story from upstairs. Thank you for that intervention. You know, when Mr. Pradhan was petroleum minister, he set up a fund, 300 crores, which will go and, you know, once exhausted, will get replenished. That's the fund which was created. Today we heard an entrepreneur say that we would have been dead by now had that fund not come through ONGC to us. And that made us survive, and that made us actually grow to where we are, getting awarded, getting commercial, and they are commercial. I think there are great stories where we shouldn't let those cracks come in between. You know, there are lots of cracks because there are so many moving parts, but they're so important to find the thing. Just on the communication, because I think, and I'm going to come to you, Dr. Sitaram, but I think there is still a need because these are still different soda bottles in some sense. And Enrich or KPMG, but specifically because this is a collective platform, if this is of any value to you, Dr. Kalsi, Dr. Sitaram, Dr. Sahasrabudhe, I think we will be more than happy to offer that. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to add further to Professor Sahasrabudhe's comment. So we also, AICT has taken steps to create 12 innovation centers, India's innovation centers, to handhold the engineering institutions for their ideas from TRL 3 to TRL 7 training. There will be specific, people will scout for technologies and take them to the next level. So this, in 12 cities we are starting. These 12 cities are basically, where we had our physical infrastructure of AICTs, because we have closed down our operations on the approval process from them. So we thought that we'll use these facilities for these innovation activities. And also we have joined hands with some of the industries to train a large number of students in annually for upgrading their employability skills in the areas of design thinking, entrepreneurship, and boot camps. Also, we already hold 6 boot camps on the innovation side. So these are some of the initiatives.
Great. So some great things are happening. Lena, you come from a different kind of institution, right? It's, if I can call it, more elitist. But are you seeing, and the reason I come to you is because you've seen this at Terry University, now at Ashoka. How are you seeing the progress? And especially, is that ecosystem coming together where really finally the end product can be delivered, which is, mass innovation and mass manufacturing coming together?
Thank you, Anish. A few points, and allow me to step back a little bit as well and go back to the question that you're asking, education and skilling, how to align with needs of rapid innovation and scaling. So rapid innovation, and it goes back also to a point that I think one of our friends from industry made about the lack of connect between industry and academia. And I'd like to provide the academic perspective. He provided the private sector perspective. I do believe that the problem of communication is very strong, as you have been emphasizing. Experience from the Terry University, Terry School of Advanced Studies, where we had set up possibly the country's first renewable energy engineering and management program, was that we were looking to create, as you said, I don't want to call it elitist, but we were trying to create capacities at a strategy management level, whereas industry interaction said that we would like to have people in the field. And the students that were there were not interested in being out in the field and tinkering with a lot of things, as we have been talking about. So there's a basic disconnect. Students are also very, very keen to know that they have the job opportunities on a sustained basis and the growth opportunities that there is to offer. And very often we find that to be missing. So if you want to be able to provide that continuity and progression that students are looking for, you cannot be looking at a startup ecosystem. You have to be looking at a more mature system where there is a certain degree of certainty. So somewhere I think we are possibly talking past each other in this discussion that is taking place. A key word that you have used there is how to align with needs of rapid innovation and scaling. If you want to align existing systems with rapid innovation, yes, government is doing a lot in terms of creating all the opportunities for innovation, but industry, I think, is failing quite a bit, both in terms of creating the innovative capacities and opportunities as also in terms of skilling. When the government speaks of skilling, I do believe that they are looking at a whole range of things, not necessarily the energy interventions that we are possibly focusing on. So if industry would like to have skills, a very important point that you made is, or Mr. Mariwala made, is about lowering the guards, about allowing fresh thinking in. Unless you start linking up these things, unless you recognize what in the climate context we talk about scope 2, scope 3 responsibilities, and therefore the linkages with the entire value chain, you're not going to be able to do this kind of alignment unless there is real-time communication between where is it that you want to grow, which is the innovation that you really want to take forward with some degree of growth opportunities. This alignment is not going to happen. So I think we possibly need a somewhat different conversation than
I think it requires a continued and deeper conversation, peeling the onion a little bit more rather than, talking past each other, as you said. And sorry, I should have used elite rather than elitist, so that's okay. But apologies. Any views here, Dr. Balian, and please, let's have an open set of views, and then we're going to come to a minister for his views, where I'm going to ask him on what his expectation is as a policy maker. Where does he see and where do we want to take it? With that, then after that, we'll go to the startup awards, but a few final responses.
Anish, just few, this is a very interesting and very important discussion going on, but just few points that I thought are important, touching few of the main topics of discussion. Number one, it's my opinion that there is still a disconnect between industry and academia. We would have perhaps moved a little closer, but still a long gap there. The industry goes on its own requirement, the academia keeps on curriculum on their own way. So there has to be a structured way of that to interact together. One of the things I strongly feel is that it should be kind of a mandatory that a research staff or a professor spends enough time in the industry and the vice versa. That's how you can bridge that. More faith into doing research in our institutes and universities. Industry has little faith on the Indian research. I think how do you build that research? And more research should be sponsored to Indian things. There is no system when a startup wants to do some experimentation there. Can they walk into any institution, research institution, university or IITs,
or even to industry?
And at a very nominal cost and do some experimentation there? No, I don't think that.
Industry has its own testing labs. How many times do they open it up for startups?
No, I'm talking about startups.
Both. How many times does the industry open it up for startups? The mood shift I'm having is that initially I said that industry is not hearing from the skilling and education thing. But as I progress through this conversation, I'm saying the industry is not even looking to hear or not reaching out the other way around, which is, I think, important. Please, Achala.
Very interesting conversation.
Very quick introduction.
Yeah. Dr. Achala Danayat. I have been in the private sector for 20 years in the field of research and innovation, and now moved to academia. So I can give you both perspectives. So I think that there is definitely a gap between industry and academia. While I was in industry and I'm an alumnus of IIT Bombay, I can tell you that I struggled into really getting involved and understanding who are the right people to do research in the fields that I wanted. It is not as easy as people who are very entrenched in the academia. You asked about the score, right? I think the score of engagement would differ. If you go to the top tier IITs, it would be at least 6 or 7, probably on 10, because they're quite mature now and they know what is to be done. But as Nitin said, if you go to the tier 2 or tier 3 colleges, you can say it is 3 to 10 or even 2 to 10. So therefore, there definitely needs to be more engagement. And while in industry, I remember that we were sometimes really desperately needing information on any ready-made research available, at least up to proof of concept level, like Professor Sahasrabudhe said, TRL 3 or 4. But the data is so scattered that it is very difficult to find a central repository where you have all the information available about which technologies are available at what level. And the last point I want to make is that our country is very focused on a lot of applied sciences and applied engineering. But if you see the world over, there's a lot of focus on basic sciences. And today, basic sciences form the foundation of all innovations. Innovations are always on the interdisciplinary of physics or chemistry or biology. And we are very sorry to say not so much focus on promoting basic sciences. And that is where I think that we should really
Great
focus
point.
on.
Please, sir.
Yeah, I am Virendra Kumar Vijay, IIT professor, IIT Delhi. And if we see the connect between industry and academia, IIT Delhi is well connected with many of the industries. We are having research and innovation park. We are connecting with the DRDO. We are connected with many Samsung, even Airtel, and many major industries in the country. I am also the national coordinator of Unnat Bharat Abhiyan of the flagship program of Ministry of Education. So we are working with nearly 3,500 colleges in the country. And Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, all kind of colleges are part of my program, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, where every college takes around 5 villages around them and work for their development using their students and faculty members. तो मेरे को देखने में यह आ रहा है कि उन्नत भारत अभियान के माध्यम से हम जब 3500 कॉलेजेज में लगभग 18,000 गाँव में काम कर रहे हैं, तो जो रियल इनोवेशन है, वी आर आल्सो वर्किंग विद द ग्रास रूट इनोवेशंस. Many people are connected with that, and we are also working in Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. So many new innovators are coming forward, and if they want to utilize the facility of research and development, many institutions at present in the country are denying, नहीं हमारी लैब में आप काम नहीं कर सकते. My lab is open in IIT Delhi. कई गांव के लोग आते हैं, हम लोग खोल, आप काम करिए, कुछ करना चाहे तो they interact with the many faculty members and they also get opinions from them कहाँ ये ऐसा काम करना ठीक है या नहीं है. About energy transition, it is very important that in last 200 years we had seen the per capita energy consumption is a measure of development. That is not true. गांधी जी ने कहा था कि हमको कम से कम चीज़ में काम चलाना चाहिए ताकि अल्टीमेट क्या हुआ, हमने एनर्जी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा खर्च किया और व्हाट हैपेंड दैट क्लाइमेट चेंज टुक प्लेस. चाहे हवा खराब हो गई, पानी खराब हो गया, स्वास्थ्य खराब हो गया, सिस्टम खराब हो गया हमारा. अब एवरीबडी इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट वी हैव टू यूज ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी, डिसेंट्रलाइज टेक्नोलॉजी, मिनिमम एनर्जी कंजप्शन, सो दैट वी एमिट मिनिमम ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिशंस. तो जो बात है, अगर वास्तव में हमको करोड़ लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट देना है हमारे देश में, तो कैन वी मूव टुवर्ड्स ए न्यू काइंड ऑफ एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन वेयर ऑल काइंड ऑफ लोकली अवेलेबल रिसोर्सेज इन आवर विलेजेस मेक योर मिनी ग्रिड्स, माइक्रो ग्रिड्स, यूटिलाइज सोलर, विंड, बायो एनर्जी, ह्यूमन एनर्जी, एनिमल एनर्जी, एंड डेवलप ए डिसेंट्रलाइज एनर्जी सिस्टम, production system in their own every village.
Sure.
And they, in that real sense, we can control the greenhouse gas emissions.
I think that's fair points. All well acknowledged. But Rajesh, one last thing, and I'll make some observation and ask.
Thanks. I think what Rajiv started, I think we'll close it here on this table. Just two brief ideas I would like to share. What we can do for this disconnect issue between industry and research, academia. And that's a huge cultural thing. And then we have to fill the gap. And of course, few examples are there, but they are very rare. It's not that it's there common across the industry. So one solution I think is possible is that we create a forum where we bring this industry and academia together. Because if you see, as we understand electricity, energy markets and energy sector, you have, for academia, we have CGRE, IEEE, all these forums where they interact with each other. But their industry is not part of it. And industry also keep on meeting in different conferences, seminars, workshops, but their academia is not.
There's no common.
So there should be some common platform explicitly created. Either industry should take initiative or somebody should do it. Once we create it, probably it will flow naturally, because then
we will tell our problems to academia, and academia may come up with a solution. Now, as we started looking for people from IIT, we could not get right people for working in the energy market space. Not so many IITs are there, but not a single person you will find who can do, who is already working on the energy market space, and he can solve some of the problems we are facing. That is not there. Because we have not told our problem there, and they have not actually started working on those issues. So one is that we should create some forum like this, and then interaction should start. It should be more frequent, and then it should spread across the country. So then it will bring
I think that's a great summation point.
Yeah.
And I think industry needs it for own survival, because otherwise, rapidly heading towards extinction if we don't open the doors and get the people co-opted in.
Second brief thing, because one more missing element I see in the Indian ecosystem is we don't create consortium of industry who can finance the research. If you go across Europe or any other markets, we see that they have created consortiums, and same competitors, they are working together for dealing with a particular topic or basic science issue. And they are working together to, when we started talking about batteries, we saw that there are consortiums working in Europe and Australia and other places where they are doing something basic research on these things. But in India, we competitors don't meet, don't create a consortia where actually everybody will contribute a little money, but finally it will be a big pool which can fund a research, basic research into.
In fact, one of the things which we agonized over is that we have everything to create a Fraunhofer in India, because our individual education institutions are good, research institutions are good, our industry has demand, there is no mechanism to pull it together, and as you said, we don't even know what is happening where. So sometimes we replicate, duplicate, sometimes we leave white spaces out. So on that, before we go to the Startup Awards, your final thoughts.
Thank you, Anish. Since last 1 hour, there is a different approach to the basic problem. What are the challenges? I'm happy. Lot of answers are discussed. I'm talking about answers. Answers are discussed. But one issue, all have given their viewpoint. Yes, we have to recognize there is a missing link, there is a communication gap between academia and industry. It is from both the sides. I have my experience from the industry side, and now I'm working in education side, working with academia. Both of them have to move little bit forward from both the sides. Unless until what I see from the objective analysis, now time has come, India can become a manufacturing hub. Unless until there is a proper interaction between academia and industry, policy is also there, but policy is coordinating both of the end. But unless until we have a total network between both the segment, both the cohort, we will only be a consuming economy. Yes. If we want to be a producing economy, we want to get into deep tech, we have to have this marriage properly. And I hope you are becoming the catalyst, one of the catalysts, and we are in the right direction. My second expectation and observation will be, Indian industry has to repose faith in Indian startups.
Yes.
They should not be little bit miser on that area. Still, Indian entrepreneur, Indian industry is little bit conservative on spending and taking risk on Indian startups. As we develop a model in petroleum sector, putting 300 crore rupees at any point of time for it's a venture capital for the startups. And today I am so happy, I have seen a model, as you mentioned, was in financed by or patronized by a oil company startup fund. Today they are earning revenue. We have to believe, we have to repose faith on their capability. These are the two things. One, in one area, we are in the right direction. In one area, in another area, reposing faith on youngsters, we have to little bit go further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think there's two steps. Let the guard down, move 2 steps. I think there's a lot to do from both sides. But that's a great discussion. Thank you, and thanks for the lovely comments. Vikas, now over to Amit and you for startups, and we will request Sir and